everybody. I feel like the man who was invited to address another meeting and when he sat down felt hadn't quite communicated with his audience. So looking for some consolation, he turned to the person beside him and said, "How was that?" And the person said, "Oh, don't worry about it. It wasn't your fault. It was the fault of the people who invited you." So, Madam Chairman, organising committee, you're responsible for this. And I hope I meet your expectations. Who elected Oxfam? That was the headline in an article in The Economist magazine in 1995, after the trade talks in Cancun had collapsed. And there was a certain amount of outrage that the governments had come together, but because of the work of Oxfam and many other NGOs working in the wings with their advocacy positions and advising developing country government delegations and so on, that on the last day the talks collapsed and the developing world headed for the airport en masse, leaving the donor governments sitting wondering what to do next. And people began to ask, who are these people that get involved in these processes? And what right have they to do so? After all, we are elected, our colleagues in the South are elected, but who elected Oxfam? And Oxfam replied, who elected The Economist? But more importantly, there is a very important answer to this, which is in the UN Declaration on Human Rights. It is the responsibility of every citizen to work to promote human rights. And how is that to be done? If not that citizens should gather in organisations and associations with objectives to deal with issues of poverty and justice, the local community, the association for the sick children, whatever it is, that citizens must become engaged in the promotion of the rights, social, political, economic, cultural, of society. And can only be done so through collaborating together. There's no point in individuals trying to do this. And we are the representatives, after many, many years of this activity, of all of those civil society organisations around the globe who day in, day out work for the good of humanity. And that is our mandate. And it is as valid a mandate as any elected mandate. In fact, I've heard it said at one conference that we as citizens lend our vote to MPs and governments every 5 years. And in the meantime, we are observant and watchful and active to ensure that they do what they were elected to do. And that is the legitimacy of civil society. And we must never forget that. It's not a modern phenomenon. I want to talk just a little bit about my own country, Ireland, as a case study in this. The famine in Ireland occurred in 1945 to 1948. The Choctaw Indian nation of North America took up a collection and sent $150 to the Irish people as a relief aid for the famine. The people of Turkey, led by the Caliph of Constantinople, the leader of the Islamic faith in that country, sent 2 shiploads of food aid to Ireland in 1846. As those ships sailed into the harbour in Dublin, other ships sailed out carrying the food from the great big estates owned by the landowners that were being exported to Britain and beyond. This was international solidarity, food aid, expressions of goodwill from people around the world to the starving people of Ireland. This is not a 20th or 21st century phenomenon. This has been going on for centuries. The Anti-Slavery League was founded over 250 years ago. So, when we talk about civil society, we are the inheritors of a rich tradition of civil society action that has gone on for a long, long time. It is active in the world today in the same way as in Ireland the Land League got together to win the land back from the absentee landlords and make it available to peasants, so across the developing world today, similar organizations are campaigning to get land for landless peasants. In Honduras, this year alone, 15 such activists have been murdered. What about the natural resources, the mining, the forests, all of these things, exported at great profit for the benefit of rich elites? When I hear the phrase, we recognize the role of civil society as legitimate actors in development, I get irritated. Who are these people saying that civil society have a right to participate in development? Let us not forget that the first development decade was in the 1960s. Development is a 20th century concept. Civil society goes way, way back beyond that. When President Kennedy made his inaugural address in 1961, he made a very bold statement. He said, by the end of the decade, we will have eliminated world hunger and we will have put a man on the moon. Now, if you were a betting person in 1961, which of those two propositions would you thought was going to be most likely achieved? And yet today, over 1 billion people remain hungry. And we've been to the moon and back, and soon there will be no one on this earth who is alive who has ever been to the moon. That was a great success, wasn't it? So when you look at the forces that shape the world today, the political, economic, and social forces that condemn billions of people to a life of poverty, but so many others remain in affluence, and how governments have enabled this state of affairs to continue, where 1 billion people hungry in the world every day is seen to be acceptable, then I ask, who are the legitimate actors for development? We must remember that development aid is only one very small part of the relationship between the rich countries and the poor ones. And such is the way that the world has been structured around debt, around trade, around tax avoidance, around the extractive industries, the raw materials, the exploitation of the poorer countries' natural resources, that the overall flow of finance is just one way from south to north. And what we give back, we in the north, is development aid. And then we have, when it goes to the south, what happens to it? What happens to the profits that have been generated locally as governments and businessmen sign up deals with their foreign counterparts and sell off the natural treasures? Does that go to help the people of the developing world? Some of it does, yes, but we just know that the extent to which that money is ripped off by elites and just salted away in banks in Europe and elsewhere, that there is very much a situation where poor people are left disempowered, removed from power, removed from decisions, removed from any influence over their own development. And that is why the work that we have been doing over the last 3 years is critical to development. Because unless we make the principles of Istanbul Declaration reality, these are the kind of situations that are set to continue. It's not that I'm not knocking development aid. It is critical that we have it, because at the moment it is all that the developing world has. It is critical that we do it well, because ultimately those who benefit from it will benefit all the better if we are doing it properly. And it does offer opportunities around flexibility in how it is applied, how it can be applied for aid for trade, to help to develop trade as a proper means for developing revenue for the poorer countries, to promote governance structures, to train the judiciary and police, and to support people generally in their building of the nation. And it's important that we continue to lobby for it, that the 0.7% target is reached. 70 cents for every $100 of national wealth. That leaves $99.30 left for the rest of us. You would think that would be possible. It was a pledge made in the early 1970s, and yet we have failed to reach it. But aid itself is not the answer. In fact, I have heard the European Commissioner for Development Aid and others criticizing the NGOs and civil society by saying, oh, you're always on about aid. Aid is not the answer, you know. We need private sector, we need industry, we need to create economic growth. To which we say, we never said aid was the answer. In fact, in the 1970s, Julius Nyerere of Tanzania was saying, give us trade, not aid. This is an old song that has been sung for decades.